Welcome back, guys. Today I have 3 different decoys that I need to do some repairs on, so I figured I would make a video to show you the process I'm using to fix these decoys. Each of these decoys has a little bit of a different problem. The first decoy I have is this Green Headgear life-size pintail. I actually found this decoy while we were on our ice hole hunt last year. And it looked pretty bad when I first got it. It was solid white because it was covered in bird crap. I brought it home, cleaned it up, and it didn't clean up too bad, but there's a split up here in the top. I don't know if the camera will focus on that right there, but pretty good split there. And then I also drilled 2 holes in the bottom so that the water that was in it could drain out. So I need to fix that split and then fill in those 2 holes. The next decoy is one of my Green Headgear Pro grade decoys, basically just in the butt where they seal it up with sealant. The sealant came off a little bit, so it just has a small air leak there. No water got in it last season, but I do want to make sure that it's fixed up for this season. The last decoy that I need to fix is one of my Green Headgear Hot Buy decoys. I just did a review of these decoys, and in that review I mentioned that I ripped out one of the holes in the keel of this decoy. It's hard to see, but basically I was throwing this decoy and it just ripped out the plastic, so I need to fix that. So what we're going to be using to fix these decoys today is JB Weld ClearWeld. This is a 2-part epoxy that you mix together, and then it sets up in 5 minutes and cures in an hour, and it's supposed to dry completely clear. So the goal is that we don't have to do any kind of painting on the decoy after we're done. The first step is to use sandpaper to kind of rough up any of the areas where you're going to be applying epoxy. You don't really have to, but it's going to help the epoxy adhere to the plastic a little bit better. I've already done that on all of these decoys, at least in the areas where I could. Around the holes it's pretty easy to rough those spots up, but on this pintail decoy it's pretty difficult to get down in that crack and rough that up a little bit, so I didn't really do a whole lot there. For the rest of the steps, I have some gloves on, and the next step is just going to be that we're going to take a cotton ball and then some rubbing alcohol, and we're going to go around and we're going to clean up any of the areas where we plan to apply the epoxy. So pretty simple, you're just going to kind of go around the area with the rubbing alcohol just to try and get it clean, and then the cotton ball might leave behind a little strand, so just pull all of that off. And then after that we should be ready to get the epoxy going. Alright, so I readjusted the camera angle a little bit better so that I can show you guys a close-up of what I'm doing. So we have our epoxy, and then because this is a 2-part epoxy, you have your epoxy and then your hardener that come out of 2 separate tubes so that you can reuse this as needed. So we're just going to come over here a little bit and squirt out. We're just going to start out with just a little bit, and then put our cap back on, and then mix it together. Try and mix it as good as you can. And it's best if you don't do this inside. I am doing it inside right now just because I don't have a good spot to do this outside for the camera. There's too many noises and things going on. So I'm going to try and do this as fast as I can and then get these decoys in this cardboard outside so I'm not breathing the epoxy fumes. Alright, so that's mixed pretty good, so we got about 5 minutes to get these decoys done before they start setting up. We're going to start with the Pro grade just because it's the smallest job. So we're just going to get us a little bit of epoxy on here, and then let's see, put some of it on there, then try and push down and get some epoxy down into the actual hole. I actually got a little more than I really wanted, so try and wipe some off here. Let's see here. And I'm wearing gloves so I can kind of come back and push down onto the epoxy and get it down into the hole a little bit better. Come back, put just a little bit more on top. Now that one should be ready. We're going to set that one off to the side. Here, set it upside down. Next up, we have the Green Headgear Hot Buy. And what we're going to be doing with this one, I'm basically just going to fill in the entire hole, and then I'm going to come back and, if it will let me actually, I'll come back and try and drill that out. So let's get us a little bit more epoxy on here. Yeah, I think it should let me. Once it starts setting up a little bit more. Kind of came out the other side. Put some on the top up here, try and fill in everywhere that's cracked out. And it is some pretty thin stuff, so it's trying to run out from the area that I'm setting it on. So I'll probably come back and try and work this in just a little bit after it's done, or as it's starting to set up. We're going to set that one. We'll set it over here. Okay, last one, the pintail. I'm going to start off by filling in the top crack first, and then I will come back in later once that's all set up, just to make sure that that's filled in the way I need it to be, and then I'll fill in the 2 holes on the bottom. So I try and separate this crack just a little bit so I can get some down in there. And then I'm going to extend past this crack by probably about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, just to give it a little bit more reinforcement so it doesn't continue to crack out. Need some more. Didn't make it all the way down to the end. And because this stuff is a little bit thin, hopefully it will run down into the hole a little bit. Okay. Alright, so we got that one done. I'm going to try and clean off a little bit of that, and then make sure that my crack is all evenly that both the sides are matched up nice, and then we'll let it set up. Alright, so it's been about 24 hours since I applied the epoxy to these decoys, so let's take a look at them and review how it did. Starting with the pintail, this was the hardest job out of the 3 because, like I said, it had a crack in it that was about that big, and overall the epoxy filled in that crack really well, and it's completely watertight right now. But I'm probably not going to throw this decoy in my spread because, as you can see here, the epoxy dries glossy. So I'm a little bit worried about that flaring some birds whenever the sun reflects off of it and things like that. Same if you get ice on your decoys, that will flare birds. So probably not going to make it into the spread, but I'm still going to find something to do with this decoy. Maybe I'll go through and just completely repaint it just to see if I can actually repaint a decoy and make it look half decent. Or if I can find some matte clear or some ultra flat clear, I might try and spray over that area to see if it will dull down that shine. But I'm not going to go out and buy a can of it because that's just spending too much just to fix a decoy that I found. I mean, whenever you can figure out the cost of a single decoy and then the cost of epoxy and then clear, it's really not worth spending that much money to fix a broken decoy. You're better off just taking that money, sticking it in an envelope, and saving it until the next time you buy decoys. Alright, so next up is the hot buy that we did. This is the one where I filled in around the hole completely with epoxy, and then I went back through and then I re-drilled out the hole. And this one actually seems to be working pretty well. The epoxy dried and it's nice and hard, and I've been trying to kind of bend around on it to see if I can get it to break, and so far it hasn't broke. So I would be fine with throwing a rig back on this decoy and throwing it out into the spread. I'm not sure if I'm going to use these decoys this year or not, but it's nice to know that if it happens again or happens to another decoy that we are using in our spread, I can always fix it using that epoxy. Alright, so lastly we have the Pro Grade that had the small pinhole in the butt of the decoy. All I did was put a little blob of epoxy on that, and it seems to have sealed it up really nice. It's nice and airtight. Nothing comes out of it now. So this one's ready for the spread next year. So that epoxy works really well on filling in small holes. If you have decoys that have holes from being shot on the outside, it'd be good to fill those in, because you're not going to have a big area that shines. It's just going to be a small little area. Another thing you could do is take a soldering gun and kind of plastic weld those holes shut. I personally like the epoxy a little more. And then if you had cracks in your keels or something, the epoxy would work really great there. Anywhere that isn't going to leave a big blob of gloss that's going to be shining. So anything on the bottom of the decoy, things like that, that epoxy works really great for that. Alright, that's all I have for you guys on this video. I hope it helped you out. Like I said, this epoxy works great on small holes or cracks in your keels. But if you have a big crack in the top of your decoy, you're probably better off just replacing that decoy, because this epoxy is going to leave a gloss to it, unless you want to go through and repaint the entire decoy, which you're probably spending more money than that decoy is actually worth. Unless you have an older decoy that you really like that they don't sell anymore, it's probably not worth the hassle. But if you do want to buy this epoxy, I'll have a link down in the description to the Amazon page for the epoxy. And if you guys like this video, make sure you leave it a like and comment down below. Let me know if you have any other ways that you fix your decoys, or if whenever you get holes or cracks in it, you just throw them in the trash. So let me know, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching.